Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. One. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility. And then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so, you know, it really, male figures are not substantially important in the family.
The black community is in shambles. What was once a symbol of strength, pride, and integrity has become only a shadow of itself. Black people might use the same words and even the same slogans. They might project an image of strength and unity, but there are vast differences between how something appears and what it really is. Black men and women are divided with a disturbing amount of resentment in between. Issues of trust and social differences ranging from who is responsible for provisions to black women submitting to their husbands. This has resulted in a tremendous decrease in married black couples. In fact, approximately 25% of black babies are born to married parents, a staggering difference from the 1960s where over 70% were born to married parents. This division is not accidental. There were no issues of gender roles in the black community, nor was there confusion with who was responsible for what, as the black community was one of the most conservative collectives in the country. While there are influences on the left that will portray blacks in the past as living an unhappy life of sorrow and woe, statistics do not support that narrative. In fact, there is probably no other group of people in America whose lifestyles have improved as rapidly as black Americans during that period. From the 1930s to the 1960s, the average black person's income increased by 3 times. There were more blacks in college, more blacks having executive positions in companies, more blacks in movies and in entertainment, and blacks were crushing records in the realm of sports. However, there were onlookers lurking nearby who've already chosen the black community to lead their agenda, and black history in America was the perfect narrative to fuel their cause. The have and have-nots are crucial images necessary for the systematic change cultural Marxists were looking for in America. And after years of trying, these social engineers found the key to destroying a free society, and the black community would be the test subjects for this experiment. They discovered that the father was the key, as his role was that of the protector. He was to safeguard his family at all costs. With him gone, the women and children were helpless and would fall prey to any campaign or trend that was designed in a way to favor and flatter them. This was like placing children in a candy store to do as they pleased. And they have, with them not realizing the belly aches and tooth decay that would follow. This technique encourages one to view what is bad as something good by providing provisions they did not work for. What society is now seeing are the results of reverse engineering. A social experiment carefully plotted out and delivered stealthily while in plain sight. Once the scales were tilted, where black women felt secure without a man, black women would struggle against another factor, and that force would be impossible to defeat. That force would be biology, because going against nature is an uphill battle that you will not win, and no one is learning this lesson like the cultural Marxists. By using their power and influence, cultural Marxists have helped to raise the influence of black women, creating programs to help single mothers and increasing powerful, influential female characters in the media. The image of a strong, independent black woman without a man was born. And this wasn't just an image. It became an aspiration, one that both black mothers and fathers promoted for their daughters. In other words, black men and women were both guilty of empowering an image that had been artificially inserted to divide and destroy. In America, the black community was the first and only community going through this program. But there was much more. Let us start from the beginning. The separation between black men and women began after Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society programs were rolled out. These programs were introduced as a way to help lift the black community out of poverty. Financial assistance was to be provided to single mothers who didn't have a man living in the home. This alone created conflicts between both black men and women. After all, there had never been a time where black men were without their families. Many even maintained a family connection during the times of slavery. By incentivizing women to be without the father, black women were empowered in a way where they now had options outside of having to follow a man in raising their young. But this alone wouldn't be enough. The enemy reprograms its subjects in phases. During the Civil Rights Movement, something unprecedented had occurred. As far as I know, this has never been outlined or exposed in the past or present. The Black Church, which was the most conservative church in the country, now marched beside their ideological opposites: communists, Marxists, feminists, flower children, beatniks, and what later would become the LGBTQ movement. This was newsworthy to the 10th degree, but across the country there was media silence about this very unlikely union. And in this silence, the black community had been approached by Marxists in the guise of improving the social conditions in America for black people. Many members of the Black Panthers and other notable black people showed interest. Since Marxists and communists were known by most people in America as evil and anti-God, it was taboo if one was connected. So it was done in secret. Later, a phenomenon took place that is worthy of mentioning. Black men began to leave the church, while black women's attendance increased. Leftist ideology found its way in, and the black church would never be the same. Then, in the mid-1960s, there was a cultural explosion in Hollywood as blaxploitation films were introduced to the public. This genre showcased what would become two common characters: the black street hustler and the Jezebel.
In this video, we're going to look at films where racial stereotypes are prevalent, in which males are portrayed as brutes, criminals, hypersexual, predators. Let us begin with black male as a pimp.
Willie D. Willie D. They call him Willie D. D for dude. He's got to be number one. D for devil. No one crosses Willie D.
Something that had been uncharacteristic of black men and women was being circulated in films. What's worse is that this would alter not only how society viewed black men, but how they viewed themselves. And as this new role gained popularity, the aspirations of black men also changed. Then there were feminists in the media who were using artistic exaggeration to propagate this image of struggle and abuse between black men and women in order to persuade more black women to join their cause. These combined images added to the already widening gap between the sexes in the black community. By the 1980s, Hollywood had already completed a cycle of change, but black men were to be taken lightly. And black women were becoming figures of authority. With her wit and sass, her defying male authority became part of the entertainment, with contention and dysfunction itself evolving into a character. Of course, the psyop was not obvious. Laughter was the smokescreen, and one-liners, or what's sometimes called clapbacks, changed how we viewed sitcoms altogether. But the gap was not wide enough. Cultural Marxists looked to put the nail in the coffin and devised a plan that would appear to raise black women over men, if not financially, then image-wise. And they used Hollywood imagery to insert the idea of more black women entering college. NBC's spin-off of The Cosby Show called A Different World was one of the first television shows displaying black people attending college. The main characters on the show were black women with only a few black men who had supporting roles, and this formula became a success. There were other Hollywood films that joined this movement, I'm sure for reasons that are positive. This would help camouflage the initiative. In fact, when it comes to black sitcoms that followed, year after year you may have detected a pattern. Of the cast, how many main characters were women? What was their lifestyle, their marital status, and their love life like? Did she have children? What's also important was the ratio of males to females on these shows. As black sitcoms moved in this direction again and again, the black community quietly slipped into matriarchal status. In other words, the girl power that you're recognizing in action movies and Marvel cinema today has already been done for decades in the black community. We can't forget black men. What happened to black men while women were being placed on a pedestal for being sassy, uncooperative, and defiant of any male order? Well, they had special plans for the men. The West Coast rap group NWA topped the charts with their platinum-selling album Straight Outta Compton in 1988. This was a major shift in rap music's message and the birth of gangsta rap. While there were others, NWA were pioneers of gangsta rap. With their defiant lyrics and blaxploitation theme samples, young black boys now had the perfect anthem to play in the background while engaging in drive-bys and street politics. If the blaxploitation pimp movies didn't change all young black men's aspirations, the drug game placed young black men's mind on reacting rather than responding. In 1994, Bill Clinton signed into law the largest bill against crime in the United States history, called the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, commonly referred to as the 1994 Crime Bill. Then Senator Joe Biden of Delaware drafted the Senate version of the legislation. It's also important to point out that privatized prisons were on the rise. Between 1990 and 2009, the ACLU reports that the building of privatized prisons has increased approximately 1,600%. In other words, while drugs and crimes were ravaging the inner cities and beyond, investors were spending hundreds of millions of dollars banking on there not being a resolution to crime. That brings us back to biology. If men are viewed as dregs of society and black women as successful scholars, there will be issues of survival of the black race itself. Because women are hypergamous, they will choose mates only at or above their earning level. This is biologically true in most cases. If more women are in college and graduating with degrees, while the image of black men is that of a deadbeat or someone in and out of jail, there will be a deficit resulting in a decline in marriages, black babies born, and even trust. But if you were to follow the statistics, black men are still out-earning black women. So besides the false image, what else is there that has altered the thinking of black women? And my answer to that would be everything. Because television is still pushing the same campaign and they've never let up. The political realm is also pitching in, prioritizing black women over men and placing black women in higher positions. Most black men are in the clouds, still venerating the feminine principle, unaware of the many forces that are already assisting her while demoting and devaluing him. And remember, these programs are tested on the black community and are spread throughout the country to all races of people upon successful completion. So be on the lookout. As for Hollywood, it is more foe than friend to the black community, and they are luring our women with honey and flattering them and saying what they want to hear. While doing so, the government is competing against men for their positions as protectors of society, while demonizing masculinity. In fact, the government, Hollywood, big tech, big pharma, and big business are all allies that have mentally and chemically altered men, hypnotizing them into giving up their guns and creating stricter laws in order to keep them out of their hands. The mind control programs are not only proven to be effective, but have assisted in black Americans destroying themselves out in the open for all of the world to see. And the world has quietly taken notice. It is time that we wake up from this madness. We must resist their vices and ignore their lies. Men and women are meant to build and grow together, becoming our best selves through trials and tribulations. To the men out there, let this be your wake-up call. A call to observe what is below the surface. It is in that place where you will find substance and truth. This is my understanding. What is yours? Please comment below, like and share if you enjoyed this content. Subscribe and ring the notifications bell so that you'll know when I release my next video. Until next time.